Hi little berries, this is Eryberrie here. This is a follow-up to the atheism video that I did about 2 weeks ago, I think. It's a follow-up to what I spoke about in the video, but also to some of the comments, as well as other things that I wish to address in addition to that. I just wish to start by saying that I will not be engaging in debates in the comments. I don't believe that they're the appropriate form in which to do that. If you're going to have a debate, it needs to be under debate conditions, with time allocated for each, an invigilator, that kind of thing. There were some really lovely positive comments both in the video and on Reddit. There were also some constructive comments, and there was somebody who very clearly wanted to enter into debate with me about certain things, and even though I acknowledged a few of their first comments, I haven't replied to their last comment because I just don't wish to engage in a debate. I've told them that I don't agree, and I still don't agree, and I think it's best just to leave it at that. By all means, if you don't agree with what I say, please leave a comment below, and thank you very much for taking the time to do that and to watch the video. If anyone in the future ever wants to engage in a debate with me, that's something that I may consider, but at the moment that's not something I'm burning to do. But by all means, put whatever you want in the comments, and thank you very much for taking the time to watch the video and leave a comment, but don't expect a debate because it's not going to happen. I wish to address some things that came up in the comments and something I mentioned in the last video, which I still stand by, and I just wish to assert again that atheism is not the assertion that gods don't exist. To kind of illustrate that, I'll use an analogy, which I have heard people use before, is say, for example, unfortunately there was a murder committed, and somebody said to me, like person A said to me, person B did it, and I say, can you prove that? If they can't prove that, or they give me any evidence that's flimsy or not conclusive proof at all, I'm not going to believe that that person did it. But that doesn't mean that I therefore believe that they're innocent, because they haven't been proved to be innocent. That is exactly what atheism is. Is God guilty or is he not guilty? It's completely illogical to think that, just because somebody doesn't, believe your claim, that therefore they believe the opposite. That's not the case at all. Atheism is simply the default position of being in the middle ground and saying, prove it, can't prove it, therefore don't believe it, that's it. But that doesn't mean we go the other way and say, therefore, actually I'm claiming that there's no such thing. I wish to use another analogy, just to illustrate that a bit more, and this is something that Matt Dillahunty has put forward before, which is you have a jar of gumballs, and the number of gumballs in there is either even or odd. And if person A said to me the number is odd, I'll say, okay, well let's find out, let's open it up and count them. They say, no, don't do that, I just know that it's odd. How do you know? I just know. Can you prove it? No. Or, I just have a very, very good feeling that it's odd. Okay, I'll say I don't believe you, but that doesn't mean that I therefore believe that it's even, because I can't prove that either way. I'm not making the claim that it's even, I'm simply rejecting your claim because you have not proved it. And going back to a point that somebody made in the last video, is that you can rationalise, you can come to logical conclusions about things, but even rationalising and coming to a logical conclusion is not proof positive that something that somebody has said is there is therefore not there. We can probably come to a very, very good idea, or something that it's extremely unlikely, which I believe it's extremely unlikely, but that is not absolute 100% proof that it doesn't exist. But of course that doesn't mean that I therefore think it does exist. I'm in the middle ground saying I don't believe that a God exists, but then again I can't prove that he doesn't exist. Now if people say to me, why don't you believe in God? The first thing I'm going to say is, which God? So we need to establish that first, but let's just say Judeo-Christian God. That's usually the go-to one because that's the religion in which I was first brought up in, and most predominant religion of the world, so let's take that. There is one thing that's always bothered me. These deities never speak for themselves. They never settle the debate themselves. They never say, I am here, I exist. Now a lot of people say that Jesus did that, but first of all, it's questionable whether or not Yeshua of Nazareth actually did exist, from the writings of Josephus as well as the Bible. But just because it's written down doesn't mean that it really happened. First of all, you have to prove that that particular person existed, and then you have to prove that he actually was the Son of God. And just a book saying that he was the Son of God is not proof that he was the Son of God. There were also many self-proclaimed messiahs around about the time. There was Apollonius, Theodos, Judas, and they all claim the same thing, but we can't prove that any more than we can prove Jesus was actually the Son of God. I was talking to somebody at work quite some time ago now, and they thought that even if Yeshua of Nazareth did exist, it's kind of very likely that he was probably the Derren Brown of his day, probably a conjurer, a trickster, a magician, somebody who could fool people. He may have suffered from mental health issues. Of course, back then, that was, nobody ever thought about that. So how can you really tell that somebody is telling the truth? He could have been lying. He could have been delusional. He could have been deceiving himself. And people who wrote about it could have been lying. They could have been delusional. They could have been deceiving themselves. Also, when I say gods never speak for themselves, it's always people who have to tell people. It's people who write the books, recreate the books and copy the books. They cut down the trees to make the books. They translate them. They make even more copies. They mass produce them. They're the ones who bring it out to the world. People build the monuments and buildings. People make the cloths. People give sermons. It's always, the gods are always working through people. It's always incognito. It's always through a medium. If these gods were so powerful, especially the Judeo-Christian God, can they not just appear, apparate right in front of us and actually produce a Bible out of nothing? Because, he created the universe out of nothing. Surely he can produce a Bible out of nothing, or anything out of nothing, just to prove that he does exist. But he doesn't do that. He leaves it all to us, or the gods leave it all to us. They never ever are able or capable of doing anything themselves. Lots of people say that, God worked through them or spoke to them. God works through doctors and medical staff to make people better. Well, how can you measure that? How can you prove that? If it's somebody doing something, how do you get the conclusion that there's something behind them making them do that? When people try to convince me that God exists, I say, hold on. It's not up to you to tell me. If this God does exist and wants me to know they exist and wants me to believe and worship, they can bloody well tell me themselves. It's up to them. It's not up to you. Don't say a word. Don't give me a Bible. Don't give me the Quran. Don't give me the Vedas or any of the other religious texts out there. Don't give me any kind of talisman or a sermon. Leave it. If any god or goddess or whoever it is out there wants us to know they exist, they can bloody well make themselves known. And they'll know exactly how to do that. I also have a problem with Jesus being born. Why did he have to be born? If he had just apparated right there in the middle of Israel, fully formed as a 30-year-old man, which is apparently the age he was when he actually started preaching, that would have held a lot more weight and there would have been a lot more eyewitnesses to that. Also, another thing is, why that particular area? Why not global? Because there are people living in other areas of the world that had no knowledge of this until hundreds of years later. If these gods are so powerful and so almighty, why do they need everyone to do their dirty work for them? Why do they have so many lackeys? It just reminds me of Mr. Souze in Usual Suspects. You hear people talking about him as if he is some sort of god amongst the mafia. And then it turns out he was actually one of the gang all along, who actually wasn't one of the gang. He was Mr. Souze, but he was posing as not Mr. Souze. I don't know. But it just kind of reminds me of that, is that we're all led to believe that there's somebody up there, but we never ever see them. We never ever hear from them. We never ever have any real proof of that. We just have to have faith. And faith is belief without evidence. Nah, not going to do that. Also, there's something that I've just thought of, actually. Was a few years ago I went to a funeral of a family member, which was in a church. And I was sat there with a family member as well who was a born-again Christian. This church was really quite beautiful, and I made a remark. I said, it's really, really nice. I really like the architecture. And this family member said to me, and I'm not kidding, she said, yes, but it's people who carry God. What this person actually said to me, without realising, is they've kind of said pretty much what I've been saying in this video. People carry this God because this God can't carry himself. You know that biblical story about, footprints on the beach, I was carrying you, that's why you only saw one set, that kind of thing. Well, was this God carrying me, or am I carrying this God? But she said that people carry God. Somehow God can't carry people, and he can't carry himself. People have to carry him, quite literally in their pocket in the form of a book. It's actually people that need to keep this going. It's people that need to carry it forward. So her saying that, at the time I just kind of rolled my eyes, but I thought about it quite a bit since. And I agree with her. but maybe just not in the way that she actually meant it. There are many communities all over the world who have never ever heard of the Judeo-Christian God or heard of the other gods that have been put forward throughout the years. So what of them? Would these gods blame them for something they didn't know? If the answer to that is no, then why do we have to tell anyone? Why can't we just not tell anyone again? And therefore nobody will know, and therefore we'll all go to heaven. Problem solved. Okay, this has just been a bit of a ranty video. I'm probably going to have to edit it quite heavily because I haven't scripted any of it. But I've been encouraged to keep doing these atheism videos from people on Reddit and also in YouTube and on Facebook. So I am going to keep doing them. So if you've got something to say it below. And if you would like to know when I'm doing my next atheism videos, please subscribe and turn on the notifications, otherwise you won't get a notification. I don't know why YouTube doesn't just automatically put you in the notification squad, but either way. Hope you enjoyed this video anyway, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye!